every year we're feeding more people at soup kitchens and food pantries, and every year more people are going hungry. Instead of huge forklifts, we're literally having Cub Scout troops in solving a major social problem. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a lot better than people starving. As I point out in my book, there are some people on the far left who say these pantries and kitchens, not even the far left, progressives, say they should go away, and then the people will be forced to rise up and demand social justice. I don't think history shows that true. I think if they went away tomorrow, poor people would suffer more. And I argue they should be changed in what they're doing to help people get food stamps, help people get WIC, help people get living wage jobs, but the system isn't working. In 1980, in New York City, there are about 30 soup kitchens in New York City. You know, soup kitchens serve hot food, mostly in a setting where you have to come. Basically, the people come there are the more likely to be the stereotypically hungry, not always, but often men, often homeless, often substance abuse and or mental illness problems. Well, I gotta tell you, if I was homeless, I'd be a substance abusing, mentally ill person pretty quickly. That being said, before 1980, the vast majority of feeding programs in America were soup kitchens. And there are only a few hundred in America. Less than 30 in New York City, a few hundred in America. Today, New York City alone has 1,200 of these agencies. 1,200 of these agencies. Nationwide, there are more than 40,000, feeding more than 25 million Americans a year. A year. 2/3 of the agency in New York and America are food pantries, serving boxed and canned groceries. They're not homeless people. Homeless people, by definition, by and large, can't even eat that food in a can on the street. They're people in homes who are just poor, who can't afford to feed their families. So what do we have in America today because of the failure of this ideology and the failure of this myth? What we have is not hunger in Korea, like North Korea or Somalia or parts of Latin America. I'm very clear in my book. And I'm generally critical of sometimes advocates or fellow people in the movement who use terms like starving. So in my judgment, we don't frequently have that occasion. Maybe Dr. Frank can tell about some stories she can. But to me, the more common thing in America is people choosing between food and rent. People choosing between food and health care. Parents going without food themselves so they can feed their own children. There's an incredible study I cite in my book, just about the most depressing study I've ever found in my life, about low-income cancer patients in Kentucky who can't afford either food or cancer medicine. That's a choice. I mean, I can't imagine having neither. I can't imagine not having food, not having cancer medicine, not having both is a choice. And the greatest irony of all, a lot of people don't believe me when I say this, but Dr. Frank can give you more evidence on it. There's a whole chapter in my book that people who can't afford the most nutritious food buy the cheaper, more filling, more fattening food, and therefore hunger and obesity are often flip sides of the same malnutrition coin. And plenty of low-income neighborhoods don't even have the fresh produce, don't even have the whole bread, don't even have the skim milk. Even if you could afford it, you couldn't even get it. It just isn't there. Now, some people say that, oh, wow, the Heritage Foundation, this right-wing think tank in Washington, people say, oh, your group in New York's called the New York City Coalition Against Hunger. There's no one for hunger, is there? I say, well, you've never heard of the Heritage Foundation. They have a cottage industry trying to deny this is a problem, saying, oh, it's episodic. It's not like North Korea, so it's not a serious problem. Dr. Frank can tell you, I tell you in the book, even the type of food insecurity we have in America is devastating on the emotional and physiological growth of our children. Dr. Larry Brown of Harvard has calculated that hunger costs American society $90 billion a year. That's billion with a B to our economy. And lost wages because hungry people are less productive, lost educational performance because there's beaucoup evidence that hungry people don't do as well in school, and that hunger increases our health care costs immeasurably. So that is the status of hunger today. Now, again, some people say, well, people aren't starving in the streets. It's not a problem. I say in a country with over 400 billionaires, at least a few weeks ago, maybe there are only 300 now, but somehow they'll muddle through. The bottom line, when I was growing up, there were like 2 billionaires in America, like Paul Getty and Howard Hughes. I didn't know of any others. Today, the Fortune 400 list of the richest people in America, merely being a billionaire isn't enough to get you on that list because there are more than 400 billionaires. Now, I'm a committed capitalist. I really am. My grandparents came here and made a better life for their grandchildren for their hard work and their sweat and their faith in this country, which I still have. I just want to go back to a time when people can come here and work their tail off and get ahead. And it's not just on who you know, it's how hard you work. And again, that's the magic of things like national service. I just want to say one more word about national service, and Michael knows this story well. President Clinton believed fervently that there should be no economic needs test for national service, that it should be sweat equity, that every American should be able to serve and get an educational award. And when the bill was first being considered by Congress, people on the right who just wanted to kill the program, and people on the left who didn't like this new idea of middle-class kids being able to get college aid, actually teamed up to have an amendment in the bill that was saying only poor kids could do national service. Clinton understood not only was not the message he wanted to send to the country about the importance of service for everyone, but that would doom the program by just making another poor person's program. And of all the decisions made, one of the best decisions ever. I know Michael's nodding. City year wouldn't be city year if it was just low income, people. It's important. But that's why I'm calling in my book for a new series of social policies that do what AmeriCorps did, promote community, opportunity, and responsibility, and all these issues bringing together. So much we have to choose between one or another. I think food stamps are a lousy way to fight hunger, but they're a lot better way than all the others that don't exist. In my state, I know everything's perfect in Massachusetts, so I'll just tell you bad stories from New York. You are entirely treated like a criminal to get food stamps. Massachusetts doesn't do it, thank goodness. New York's one of the 4 states in the union you're still fingerprinted to get food stamps. It's about $1 a meal for a benefit, and you're treated like a criminal to get food stamps. The conviction rate in the United States Senate, the New York State Legislature, and the New York City Council dwarfs the conviction rate for food stamps fraud, and yet these folks are telling poor people for their lousy $1 a meal, they have to leave work, to travel across town, to wait all day at a government office to prove they're not criminal. Sometimes food stamps applications have to prove negatives. They have to prove they're not living with someone. You prove you're not living with someone. They have to prove they don't have a bank account. You prove you don't have a bank account. And this is the treatment we have today. I compare this in my book to agriculture subsidies. There are a few thousand people living in New York City who get agriculture subsidies. No needs test, you can be a billionaire. David Rockefeller, he's a great guy. Hope he gives lots of money to City Year and my group and all these folks who give lots of money, but he's getting yours and I tax dollars to not grow food or grow food at some farm in Idaho he's never seen. And yet, he doesn't get fingerprinted. And yet, when it comes to poor people, also, oh, we're worried about fraud. Got to make this really tough. That's the bad news. Ready for the good news? And I'll end with this before introducing our incredible panel. We can end this problem. We can end this problem pretty easily. We know how, and we have the money to do it.